We're back on the thorny old subject of student loans this week. We have discussed it briefly before, Guy, haven't we?
Yeah.
But it does appear that, now, whichever way you want to look at it, you could call it another U-turn or you could call it the government are listening, because noise coming from the Chancellor yesterday with her suggesting that the whole student loan system is broken, which differs considerably from what she was saying a month ago, where she was saying, in her view, it was quite fair. I understand she's also said at one point that those people who don't get the opportunity to go to university shouldn't be paying for those who are looking to get themselves a degree.
I have heard that, yes.
Which
I
is
don't know who
thing.
the creds for that go to, but if she said that, that's possible.
That's a peculiar thing to say, but
yeah,
it does appear that they're looking to move on this, and I'm not quite sure what they're going to do. I mean, we discussed this before. We were looking at a graduate tax, weren't we, which was in the offing. They were suggesting that might be one solution. I mean, your two sons have burdened with these loans, aren't they? I think you've got a bit of lived experience in this.
I have got a bit of lived experience. I managed to put 3 kids through uni. So none of them got in under the old
other one's
grant.
up a chimney, isn't he?
Yes, from last week. He's doing well. Though. None of them got in under the old grant system. So all of them got in the student loan system. Now, the eldest managed to get in, I think, in the last time when fees were £3,000 per term.
Yeah.
So he came out with debts because he then had a maintenance loan on top of that in the region of 20-odd thousand, low 20s. And gradually now he's beginning to repay, but only just. But because the original debt was relatively low, that's fine. The other two haven't got a hope in heck of repaying their loans because they came out with 50,000 plus, which is the sort of average, because then the fees went up to £9,000 per year. And once you add their loans on top, so they haven't got a hope in what's it. So theirs will be written off after, I think it's 30 years. But, from a motivation point of view, it's pretty grim to see your student loan statement and see that whilst you're paying in what you have to pay in, the interest is far in excess of that. So
how much, do you know how much, what's the figure that you have to earn over and above which you have to stop paying?
It's roughly £29,000, which is gone up.
It's not a lot, is it, in today's?
It's not a lot. It's not a lot.
No.
But that's the one that Reeves froze. She treated it like the tax allowances.
Yeah.
Which seemed wrong to me because that was never the deal with the original student. So you got that. There's 2 things which I think are wrong. You've got the 29,000 frozen forever, and you've got interest at 6.2%. Now, I listened the other day to a podcast about this because I've never understood why it's RPI plus a rate. And what someone said, it's the insurance element. So what's that? That's to cover for the number of borrowers who don't repay.
Yeah.
But that's what it is. And people who are paying are thinking, I'm going backwards. So,
well, I guess that's the same in, working for banks. It's the same in any consumer lending, isn't it? That you charge those who are more of a risk, to cover for those who don't.
But the problem you've got is these kids take these loans out when they're 18. They don't understand this. And I don't think the parents really understand what they're signing up to. But then to change the contract, although it's in the small print that they can, but to change the basis of that contract whenever they like, I think that's wrong as well. Lots of things wrong with this.
I mean, this all roots back, doesn't it? Partially. And nobody comes out of this smelling of roses, to be honest.
No.
You've got Tony Blair who wants everybody to go to university. And then we've got, I can remember, the coalition government who were introducing and increasing student fees. Yeah, they broke a pledge when they entered government. They were going to scrap them all together, and ended up putting them up, didn't they? And successively over the last, 20 years or so now, haven't they? They've gone up and up and up, and we've reached where we are. I mean, you're going back to when you would have had the opportunity and I would have had the opportunity, or maybe not, to go to university. Very, very few people that we knew went to university, did they? I think I can count on one hand, or even on one finger, thinking about it. A number of my friends, I mean, we had a guy we used to call the Admiral, didn't we? Who went to university.
Yes, bless him.
Yeah.
God rest his soul.
And that was at the time where the state paid for everything. in terms of, they paid for you to go to university. Very, very few people went, so they could afford to do that. And those people who did go, I think not only was it good academically, but they had a whale of a time. I mean, Glad to Be Blue, I think it was, or something. He had do you remember the Admiral, that they had a week where they all dressed in blue and got absolutely hammered and went and sat and they had subsidised refectories as well that sold cheap beer and all that type of stuff there at that particular time.
Yeah, the whole, I swear that my three went not for the education, but for the perceived experience.
Yeah.
But anyway,
and I guess that's part of the problem. If you were to take it back to when we, in theory, would have had the opportunity to go to university, then the numbers going to university were much, much smaller. I haven't got the exact figures to hand, but if you were to have
10% maybe,
you were to introduce this sort of scheme at that point without increasing the numbers, the argument would have been that those people who went to university had the opportunity to come out with much higher earnings than the average man is. Now you've got 3/4 of all kids going to university. Is there any surprise that a lot of them aren't going to be in a position to start paying these loans back, because they're not getting they're still getting more, I think, than the average school leaver, but not significantly.
In some cases, there's lots of bad press about some of the marginal degrees. I read a figure this morning that said something like you've got to earn £66,000 per annum to start reducing your student loan. I thought, my goodness.
It's absurd, isn't it?
Yeah. Plus, there's the other disincentive to work. So let's just say you've hit the 40% tax band. I know that you think that makes you a millionaire, but let's just say you've hit that. The marginal cost of a student loan, it means that the next pound you earn is 51% in tax, because that's your 40%, your national insurance at 2%, and 9% student loan. So the disincentive. So there's a lot wrong with this. And there's a lot of people shouting about it, isn't it, at the moment? Martin Lewis.
Everybody's unhappy. Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Did you see the ambush, Martin Lewis?
He got Kemi Badenoch pinned down, didn't he, on Good Morning Britain? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. That was a bit off, though, wasn't it? Because he wasn't even supposed to be on that bit. He just appeared.
He's the champion of the consumer, isn't he? He's the knight in shining armor. So I he's trusted, isn't he? I do think there's a lot of hypocrisy. I mean, I don't think, very well Kemi Badenoch talking about it, but she sat in a cabinet when it was broken, did bugger all to sort it out. So there's nobody who can.
A very few.
But they need to. It's another one of these issues where they need almost like cross-party agreement to translate, and not a Royal Commission. Please, no, not another Royal Commission, because that'll go on till 2045. I don't know, but that's what I fear will come out of it. But there's an argument that says, and I think the Tories are talking about this, about stripping away academic qualifications from practical qualifications. Going back to we talked about this, didn't we? The old polytechnics and technical colleges and university, which were primarily academia, from what I can recall in days gone past. But I also wonder whether we ought not to be looking at more. And I'm not talking about you because you're going to go, oh, he's burdening business with more expense. But I also wonder whether we ought to be working more closely with business in terms of providing business with what they want in terms of, employees coming out of college. So if you're looking at the practical side of things as opposed to the academic side of things, maybe we ought to have more cooperation between big business and meeting some of the expense directly rather than through the taxation system, to get people that they want truly trained up in what they want them to be trained up in.
I think at the moment everything's on the table, but if I look at it from the borrower's point of view, the individual who's got the debt rather than all these sort of great and the good, I think there are a couple of things that could be done straight away. One would be to reinstate the sort of inflation link to the point where you start paying, because otherwise it's just like another stealth tax. The second thing would be to revisit the interest rate, because I think 6.2%, it's not quite, who was that moneylender who went bust? The one that, do you remember? Wonga, was it? Wonga?
Oh, Wonga, yes.
It's not quite
Wonga.
Wonga League, but it's getting way beyond, in my opinion,
1,000% per annum they were, weren't they, at one point? Yeah.
I don't know what it was.
Yeah, no, I agree. But you're a banking man, aren't you, at the end of the day?
Man,
so you'll know that that's one side of the balance sheet. Where's the other side then? Where's the money coming from that she's obviously accounted for in terms of,
Well, strangely enough, again, I need to get a life. Let me say this first, because I was the IFS, Mr. Cheerful's old mob.
He's not there anymore, is he?
No,
He's gone,
it's far too optimistic these days. He needs to come back. Anyway, the IFS did a podcast on it, and they were basically saying somehow this is off the country's balance sheet, but the reason it's so expensive is because the rate has to pay for those who do have their loans written off, or those who, for whatever reason, don't repay. And it all starts to get a bit messy. But
so how do you avoid that? You're then going to put it on to, if they buy a house, you're going to mortgage their house to the state in terms of when they die, we'll take back our student loan? Or?
No, I don't think you'd do that. But I think you do have to give.
That was a joke. That wasn't.
Sorry,
I didn't. Sorry, I was being ironic.
Yeah, but there's a sort of a left-wing idea that might turn up from somewhere. But no, I do think you just need to give the borrower a chance of reducing the debt. And if the interest rate is one of the reasons for it, that needs to be looked at. And you've got to question whether it does have to wash its own face, as they used to say. Do we really have to use the borrower to pay for all those who aren't going to be able to clear their debt? Or maybe we come back to the basic premise: is this right for the country? Because you can understand that when Blair came up with this idea, it was a reasonable idea that it'll supercharge, the intellect of all of our population, and it'll give us growth. But that obviously hasn't worked.
No,
so it's not working, is it?
It was on a rising tide at that time, wasn't it? There was growth in the economy and they had the money to spend on these sort of things.
Yes.
I mean, I would, to tail this off, I would say all the mood music at the moment within government seems to be, and has recently become, that there's something coming on this, that things are going to change. And I think from a political perspective, it's one of those issues that would make a big splash and reinforce their sort of socialist credentials, try and help students and bring a lot of students back from the Greens. I don't think many of the students would have gone across to Reform, but bring them back from the Greens, I think, if they did this. Watch this space, I think.
Okay.